Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Alana. We wanted to give it a few minutes for people to join. So my name is Alana Trubitz. I am the general manager of Serendipity Labs in downtown LA. Thanks for joining us today and welcome to our Serendipity Labs LINC webinar, Taking Control of Debt, presented by Ivan Lovegren. Am I saying that right, Ivan? Is it Lovegren?
Yep, you are pronouncing it correct. It's Lovegren.
Sure. Yep. In association with Meraki Fitness. Taking control of debt, it's a cool topic. We're going to be learning about the type of debt you have and setting up a plan to take care of that debt. I mean, doesn't that sound like an amazing thing to learn? There'll be tips along the way and plans that we can turn into actionable items to get you back on track. Ivan is a retired income specialist, and he is a CDFA who joined Signature Resources in 2016. As a member of the board of Rotary of Los Angeles, Ivan believes in giving back as important as educating. He has served on the Beverly Hills Mayor's Next Committee and is a member of the Beverly Hills Chamber of Commerce and is also a program manager at Vesta, a new division for divorce, a national group that seeks to provide education and empower those going through the divorce process. Now, for any of you that are not familiar with Serendipity Labs, we are an upscale hospitality company. We offer flexible office space, co-working, meeting, and events. This location opened up in June of 2019 in downtown LA. We're right in the middle of Bunker Hill by Grand Central Market and the Angel Flight. It's a really beautiful property. I'd love to have anybody who's in for a day pass. Let me know. You can hit me up afterward. If you ever need an occasional place to work or a dedicated place or office, we have everything from drop-in once in a while to 2-year agreements on a team from 1 to 100. We also have these great events, and there's a website where you signed up for this one that has a history of a number of amazing events throughout our about 40 labs across the country, and you'll have access to those too. Before I go on anymore, I'm just going to ask that we feel free to ask any questions and comments through the chat function. If you have questions, please write them down. We're going to have a Q&A at the end, and we'll be really excited to hear your questions. I know I'm going to have a bunch. We'll also be sending out a follow-up email, including the information on how to connect with Ivan and Anna from Meraki Fitness, and you'll be able to redeem your free day pass. So now I'll hand it over to Ivan.
Awesome. Thank you, Alana. I just wanted to put this screen up for a minute for people to read and make sure they recognize that today is an educational workshop. This is not meant to be specific advice. Please talk to your tax and legal professionals and financial professionals before acting on any advice. That said, I'm really appreciative to Serendipity Labs. I think this is maybe the 5th or 6th event that I've been asked to do, second on the LINC platform. So thank you. I'm looking forward to getting back to in-person events. And you mentioned Meraki Fitness. Anna Stavridis, Meraki Fitness, is who brought me into this. She's a certified corporate wellness specialist. So she's really great at going into spaces like Serendipity and meeting with the businesses there on employee wellness. And what was shocking was in her first year of doing it, she kept hearing financial questions also. You know, our employees are stressed about this, or I'm a solopreneur and I don't understand this. And so that's why Meraki Fitness and Wellness brought me in to start doing education on those things and being able to help clients with both, you know, they're helping with the physical, they've got emotional experts, and then now they've got financial experts. So really great organization if you're looking to expand your business practices and wellness for employees. And by the same token, my plug for Serendipity is, well, we're talking about getting out of debt. A lot of us have overpaid for the wrong office space or overpaid for a non-functional office space, while Serendipity creates an incredible space that you can go into very easily at your leisure, get as much space or as little space as you need, And I love that you do wellness events like this and like the ones that we've done in person in Hollywood. So there you go. It is all tied together. And I say that because also people are like, who's this guy talking? And you see some weird letters behind my name, CDFA. So I'm with a firm called Signature Resources, and they recognize that there's nothing more annoying than a financial advisor who can't really articulate what they do. We do fee-based financial planning, which means it's not just that we sell this product or that product. People pay us a fee in order to analyze their total financial situation and help them make sense of it. So that's the point of what these educational seminars are about too. It's, look, I know debt is bad. Nobody's here saying, you know, hey, I'm glad I have debt or anything like that. You're trying to find solutions, but who's a real person that can help us figure that out and understand the mechanics of it in normal day-to-day terms without spending, 6 years learning how to do it. So all of our seminars start off with this question: what is financial well-being? And this is absolutely key. Even when we talk about emotional health as well as financial health and physical health, how do you get financial freedom? Is it, I need $10 million in the bank before I can be free? Well, we actually believe that there's a path to freedom, and that if you can start your steps on that path the right way, even if you don't have that $10 million, even if you're still working for a living, even if you're still turning your energy into income, you can at least pull the freedom that you should have in the future into the present so that you're less stressed, so you're less frustrated, so you don't have that subconscious annoying you in the back of your mind when you go to Starbucks and get the large with 2 pumps versus getting just a black coffee, because that does weigh on us over time. Not knowing our financial situation with clarity, our subconscious, in an effort to protect us, starts to eat away at us a bit, especially when it comes to debt. So the first question in the poll is, where are you at on the financial well-being scale? Do you have no idea? Or are you at step 1? Do you feel like you have control over day-to-day, month-to-month finances? So that's really important. Obviously, if you don't have that first step done, we can't talk about investing in mutual funds or, buying crypto or going to Vegas to try to get rich. We have to get control over our day-to-day finances first. Once we have that, are we able to absorb a financial shock? So today we're going to talk about getting out of debt. Well, let's say we get out of debt and we're doing great, we're sailing along. What happens if something goes wrong? Do we immediately have to run back to the credit card? Or have we created hedges and protections that keep us from getting hit by financial shocks? And then we can talk about being on track to meet financial goals. How does my retirement look? Am I going to be able to buy a house in 2 or 5 years? Can I have children? Can I send those children to college? If you already have children. Proud father of 2 4-year-old twin boys here. So that's one of the biggest stressors for me right now. With all of those steps leading up to, wow, I have the financial freedom to make the choices that allow me to enjoy my life today. So keep that in mind just in your general life. This is what financial well-being is. This is what financial freedom is. It's not just I won the lottery or my business went to the moon. It's I've taken these steps so I know I'm going to be okay. That said, impediment to step 1 and step 2 is debt. And here's some basic statistics on the total owed by average US household carrying these various types of debt. The average US household carries $50,000 of student loan debt. It's pretty crazy, especially when you factor in that that's usually the one that we push the most. Well, I'm in deferment. I'm delaying that. Auto loans. I will say, my personal opinion, remember, this is a national educational seminar. So as a financial advisor, who does fee-based planning, I don't always look at auto loans as debt so much as an expense. I need that car to get here and there. I need it to create the income that I have. So that's a little bit different. You do still want to make sure your interest rates are in line with what they should be, though, and we'll talk about that later. And then, of course, credit card debt. So the irony is, looking at each of these, while credit card debt is the lowest on average by US household, It's also generally the highest by interest rate, oftentimes 2 to 3x what the other interest rates are that you see here. So 15,000 in credit card debt.
Ivan, I am so sorry to interrupt you, but I am personally not seeing your screen.
Oh, yeah. What are you seeing? Is it something fun and exciting?
I'm seeing you.
Ah, okay. Give me
But I'm
2
not
more
seeing your
seconds.
beautiful presentation.
Great. So
There we are.
screenshot this, take a picture of this, because this is your most important guide path through life after the seminar. And also, don't make choices without consulting with professionals. Right? There we go. Thank you for letting me know, Alana. So now we've got this beautiful screen up there, right? So seeing that, thank you. We're getting some feedback in the chat as well. Thank you, Gary, for letting us know. So yeah, so credit card debt may be the lowest, but here's another question for you. And I think we actually have a poll on this. How much is your debt costing you? So if I have $15,561 in credit card debt, do I need to make $15,561 to pay that off and to be back to zero? Well, not quite. And we're going to get to that in just a minute. So similar to our 4 paths to financial freedom, we've got a 4-path system to taking control of debt. The very first one is understand it. You know, a lot of times it seems straightforward, but there's a lot of circular things that are what keep debt in such a cycle. And then if we're going to create a plan, we got to start by classifying our debt, then create the plan. And then we also have to balance our debt and financial goals. So we'll cover all of that today. So again, how much is your debt costing you? So let's say you make a $2,000 purchase on a credit card and you have a 15% interest rate on that, and you're paying $50 a month, which is generally higher than the minimum payment on a $2,000 charge. So you're paying more than they're telling you to pay. Well, one, it's going to take you 4.5 years to pay that off. You may think 50 times 12, you know, that should be 3.4 years, but it actually adds another year and a year and a half roughly to your payment time. And the interest being charged on that adds $1,100. So you are paying 55% in interest total. So you felt like you were paying 15%. That's what they told you. That's your API or APY, annual interest charged. But you're actually paying 55% of your original purchase price. That's kind of crazy. Everything that you look at, you can look at the price tag and say, wow, that's actually going to be, you know, let's just call it double in our minds in order to keep ourselves from using that card more than we need to if we are in debt. So that's one example. There's actually a personal example I like to throw up. Did the Excel sheet pop up to the screen there? So
yeah, there it is.
So here I am, the debt expert, and when I was doing my end of year accounting this year, I looked at my personal car payment for my Toyota for my kids, and the dad car, and I noticed, wow, our very first year, our very first payment, most of it went to the finance charge. Why is that? And I did some super deep digging and realized that because we were paying on the due date, we were getting charged, you get charged much more interest if you pay bills on the due date than if you do on the first day you get the bill. Because your interest for that entire period is calculated based on the daily balance in there. So if you pay your bill the day you get it, your interest for the next period is going to be lower because it's going to be calculated on the balance after you've paid the bill. Whereas you're used to paying it on the due date. When I say you, I mean me. And that actually means that the interest being accrued, even though you've got the money for that, is growing on your balance. Even though you're like, yeah, I pay my bills on time. It is one of the most genius ways that they make money. Heads up if you're buying a car, You'll also notice that the days between payments on that first payment is a little bit bigger. Yeah, so you buy your car at the end of November and they don't send you the bill until mid-December and tell you that it's due in January. So that first bill, which is when you have the highest balance, is going to have a significantly larger finance charge if you follow their instructions instead of pay it immediately. That's $87 right there difference in what went to the company versus what could have gone into paying off my car and bringing the balance down. And every time I bring the balance down, the finance charge for the next month goes down. So I definitely don't expect you all to build a spreadsheet like this. Sometimes I get a little crazy and it's fun for me, but just know paying your credit cards at the beginning of the month versus the end of the month can end up equaling some significant savings for you long term. So ways to understand your debt. So first off, be clear about your interest rate. And also, I don't expect you to watch interest rates daily in the market, but keep a general idea of market interest rates. I recently saved a client $3,000 simply by telling them when they were talking about their car debt. And I said, well, look, cars, it's a necessary expense. He literally drives for work. It's more of an expense than a debt, but what's your interest rate? And he said, oh yeah, 7%. Interest rates are so low right now. Get that refinanced. Hang up with me, call your company and refinance. Called his company, refinanced into a 3%, and saved him $3,000 over the life of that auto bill. So it may seem annoying and it may seem like a waste of time or more time than it's worth. But really, if you're in a high interest rate and just don't know it and you can refinance, you can save yourself a lot of money. Obviously, the same thing applies to credit cards. I do find people are more cognizant of interest rates on credit cards than they are on auto loans for some reason. So I always like to point that out from experience. But understand your interest rates. Also, know if it's fixed or variable. This can be really important when it comes to mortgage. It can also be really important when it comes to your student loans. Do they fluctuate or are they a fixed percentage? And then calculate the cost of your debt. Now, again, I don't expect the spreadsheet that I built, but there's a lot of easy calculators online. If you search debt calculator and you say, look, right now I've got 15,000 in credit card debt. I can afford $500 a month towards these bills. How do I pay it off? Or how much am I going to pay off? They're going to show you. And that's when you can make an educated choice after calculating the costs and say, well, what if I could afford 550? And you can see if the savings is worth whatever you have to give up today to make yourself able to afford that. So there's an incredible power. The biggest message of all of this is there's an incredible power in certainty. We as humans love to put off things. We hate the word budgeting. It's a dirty word. We reject it. We put off our taxes. We do all of that. But it's incredible, the freedom when you know that you can make choices you want because financially you're okay. When you know that you've maximized your debt situation in the sense of minimized your cost, there are still some costs, but it's a conscious choice that this is how long it's going to take me to pay off. It's incredibly empowering. And it allows you to enjoy your life more while going through the debt phase. And then also always check on fees and prepay penalties. Again, we don't see a lot of those anymore because it's a company just asking for a lawsuit in a lot of cases, but do know the terms. Maybe there's a possibility that some of your debt is not on that daily calculation. So then it is okay to not pay until the due date, but know the terms of your debt. Also, as I'm talking, if you have any questions, drop them in the chat. I don't want this to be 35 minutes of me just lecturing. It's way more fun if you have specific questions. I hope you got that from my specific examples I like to give. It's like, these are the interesting things. So I kind of hinted at this earlier with the car example. There's good debt and bad debt. I mean, a mortgage, if you live in LA and are paying way too much rent, you know the value of a mortgage. Personal story. My landlady retired this year. She used to live across the hall from me. 3 months ago, I had to watch her pack up all of her belongings and move into an incredible house in Oregon. And I'm like, I paid for that house. My rent paid for that house. So yeah, so a mortgage may carry interest. You may be at a point early on when your amortization, how much interest there is to how much you're paying down the value, is upside down, but it's still putting money into your pocket versus somebody else's. So it's a decent debt to carry. Same thing with education. It should be something that improved your station in life, improved your opportunities. Bad debt, that PlayStation 5, got to put it on the credit card. Oh, I'll pay it off when I get to it. Especially if you continue to use that credit card for in-game purchases on all of the video games you're playing. Impulse purchases on a credit card. So this gets back to the financial wellness grid, why we want to build up our safety net. Step 2, capacity to absorb, because the safety net also gives us the room to spend versus putting things on credit. So really ask yourself, if you're struggling with debt today, ask yourself, do I need this or do I want this? And is part of my wanting this a distraction from the financial situation I'm in instead of addressing it head on? So once you've classified the debt, rank them by priority. So start off with highest interest rates. I hear this all the time. Well, I just want to get rid of that card. I'd feel better if I got rid of that card. And that's great. Again, all of this is designed to get you to a place of feeling better every single day. So some people really need to knock off cards one by one. But at the end of the day, you're here because you want the best advice. You want the most efficient system for yourself. The way you're going to get that is by paying off the highest interest rates first, even if that's the largest balance.
Hey, Ivan.
Yep.
We're still looking at the Excel. So I really wanted to see that last thing that you said about.
I hate Zoom.
Good debt and bad debt. Yeah, that's what I wanted to.
So here's all the good stuff that you guys missed. Good debt versus bad debt. There's another one I like to personally preach because I'm not from Southern California originally, but I live here now. If you do need to travel, staycations can be incredible. Just what you save on an airline ticket can be really helpful if there's something in your neighborhood, in your city, in your state that you've never seen. It's like, do we always need to travel from here to, Texas or from here to New York? Or can we just actually,
Mexico.
What? Sorry.
Don't forget Mexico.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of cheap ways to travel that can save you a lot of money. If you're dealing with debt, again, I don't begrudge anybody who's living their life the right way, or the way they want. But if you're dealing with debt and trying to tackle it, airline tickets are expensive and there's lots of exciting things to see anywhere in the country if you look. So I'm not jumping away to any other spreadsheets, so the presentation should be sound from here on out. I know Gary has a very specific question on debt that disappears from the credit report. Is it forgiven or will it be a mark against her? I am going to have to defer on that one. That is one you want to talk to a credit specialist about. That gets back to the advice column earlier. That would be a credit specialist specific portion. I'm not the expert in raising or protecting a credit score, although I know a few tips and tricks there. So yeah, again, I'd rather tell you what I tell my clients, which is, hey, go talk to this person so that they can get the right answers. So again, if you're here, you're probably looking for the best way to pay it off. And the best way is the highest interest rates first, even if it means you're still carrying 5 or 6 cards. At the same time, that can serve as an impetus to finding a better credit consolidation opportunity, whether that's a different card offer or, like I said, talking to a credit specialist about how to consolidate it. If you're in that situation where you're like, well, I've got 5 or 6 cards, so I just want to pay one off so I don't have to think about it. Well, that probably tells you should try to consolidate, should try to find a better average interest rate to pay down if you're trying to pay this down the fastest with the least amount of money. So what does that debt payment plan look like? So when you have the plan, it allows you to take control, build momentum, Number 3 on here is vastly underrated. Strike a balance with other financial goals. We've talked so much about what debt costs, but focusing on just debt can cost you in your future quite a lot. So we're going to talk about that. But again, it's also, you can see the light at the end of the tunnel. It's so much easier, instead of saying, using the number from the example, I've got 15,000 in credit card debt. It's a lot easier to say, I have 3.5 years of credit card debt, and I know that, versus 15,000, which is this lottery number out there. It's like, what are you hoping for? That you'll just hit it? Well, that's a gambler mentality, which we know is not a good emotional place. It's not a good mental health place to live in. And it's not a good habit financially to live in. So create a plan so you can see that light at the end of the tunnel and describe your debt in terms of time versus in terms of dollars. So the first step is, of course, and there's a poll question that just popped up. So let us know, what's more important to you, paying down your debt as fast as possible or paying down your debt while also saving? Be curious, everybody in the audience's thoughts. So remember our financial well-being. The first one is having control of day-to-day, month-to-month finances. If you simply aren't making enough money to support what your life costs, you have to either look at your lifestyle costs and say, like, is there unnecessary things, or am I in a situation where it just doesn't match up? I'm living at the bare minimum, then we have some other issues. That's a different seminar for us to talk about, structuring your financial life. But let's say that you do have number 1 crossed off. You've got control of your day-to-day finances. You have a dollar amount you can put towards debt. Well, you want to make sure that you're pushing it, but also working within your budget. So it's really important to set a target of getting your debt payments down to 20% or less of your household income, especially if you're in a city like LA or New York, where we know the cost of living is exorbitant. These are the places, San Jose, San Francisco, Seattle as well. The other rule is you shouldn't be paying more than 20% of your income towards housing. A lot of times LA, San Francisco, Seattle, New York don't let you do that. You gotta push it above there a little bit. But ideally, if you can look at your financial picture and find this room, that's going to be a good starting point for you. So then once we create the priority list, we're going to focus on one at a time. So you may actually make minimum payments on some of your debts while focusing the mass amount of what you can put towards the biggest interest rate debt, even if it has the highest balance. So let's say that 15,000 is spread across 5 cards. One card has a 10.99% APR. Another card has a 24.99% APR. You've got $500 a month to put at these cards. You're probably going to put, $30 or $40 a month towards that 10.99% APR one, and be putting 460, 450 towards that high interest rate one, the 24.99% APR. If you want a simplified way to do this, again, there's a lot of easy credit card calculators out there. So you can literally find on any site, you just search paying down my credit cards. You can create a plan with just Google. Very easy. They'll have a list. You put in 5 or 6 cards, you put in the interest rates and the balance. You click a button, it'll say $27, $37, $320, and let you know what your timeline is on that. So start one at a time and cross them off in order, and then develop the timeline and stick to it. In fitness, we talk about setting goals. Anna and Meraki Fitness, it's like, if you don't know what your target weight is, how are you going to hit it? If you don't know what your target lift goal is, how are you going to hit it? If you don't have a blood pressure goal you're trying to hit, you're not going to be motivated to complete it, and you're much less likely to stay on track. And then also, once you hit it, you won't even know you won't have the joy and the victory of doing it. So for you, develop a timeline and stick to it. This is a bill. This is not a luxury. It's not a choice. These are bills. These are bills that the minute you get them cleared out, that becomes money back into your life. You know, if you had $500 more a month coming into you, what could you do with that? You could buy a plane ticket on your next trip instead of, you know, driving 2 hours. So I want you to have all those things that I talk about. I just want us to get to the place where we can have them guilt-free. So here's what that debt payment plan can look like. So you'll see, you know, the time and months that it takes to pay off each of these. So it's like, you know, we're paying some of it. Here's the amount we're paying towards it. And as we get further along, or as something happens that gives us an influx of cash, we're able to pay more towards the next one. And then that gives us the total timeline here at the bottom. So now we're going to talk about, you know, the poll question that we had, which was, are you more focused on paying down your debt fast or paying down while also saving? And basically, how do you balance your debt and your financial goals? So this is really important because just as we talked about debt costing more than we think, it can also have a strong impact on our future savings. Because the most important thing in our future savings is it's not actually how much, it's how much time. The power of compound growth is incredible. It can be really hard for us to grasp sometimes in our minds because it's two different non-linear concepts, time and money. Money is actually an abstract concept. Just wrapping your head around that phrase could take some time. So Albert Einstein called compounding, you know, the eighth wonder of the world, I believe. The way it works with future savings is so significant. And I constantly hear from my savings and investing clients too, like, well, if my debt is at a 25% interest rate and my market average is 6%, shouldn't I pay off all my debt first? And there's a really interesting reason that that's not fully true. So here's a graph of paying down your debt and saving over time. So the idea is if you're doing a little bit of saving at the same time that you're paying down your debt, you'll actually end off at a better place. Now the numbers vary a little bit based on, you know, obviously market returns for one, you know, what your interest rate is for another. But I want to show you this graph. So this is a person with $10,000 in debt. And they are paying $200 a month towards that debt. And then they can begin saving. I got to pay off my debt and then I'll start saving. The interesting thing here is the savings component doesn't even have an interest rate. This is just saving. So it takes them 6 years to pay down their debt with the interest being added on. I believe this is at a 15% interest rate on the credit. And then in year 7, now they have $200 a month to save. So 200 times 12 means that at the end of 7 years, they have no debt and they have $2,400 saved. Person B, however, says, you know, I understand that time is my biggest asset on saving. What if I paid $175 a month towards my debt? And then I made a point of saving $25 a month. What does that look like? Well, with the interest, they're actually going to take 7 years to pay off the debt. So the debt's going to take another year to pay off. But at the same time, $25 a month times 12 months a year times 7 years, the same amount of time as in the first example, actually puts more money in our pocket, $3,130. Now, this is only talking about saving. It's not talking about any growth on that, any interest, any investment returns. So think about what that could look like if it were generating 2% interest, or if it were generating 3 or 4% interest. This could be a significantly better plan for you than focusing on, I got to get out of debt before I do anything else. So that's why we believe in debt management and a debt pay down plan versus debt payoff being the absolute priority. And that's why, again, having a timeline and a clear picture of what that light at the end of the tunnel looks like is great. Because think for yourself today, what does 7 years from today look like? What does 6 years from today look like? In our human brains, how big of a difference is there? We just know that's in the future, but it still is a set time. So is it going to hurt that much to extend the debt payoff by 9 months, 10 months, 12 months, whatever your situation may be, and also still know that it's going to be done and know you're going to be in a better financial situation on the other side? So another critical piece of putting your plan into action is reflecting on how you got there in the first place. I've had quite a few clients that have gone through this process, and I am sad to say a few times I've had them restart the process, and I've had to say, like, there's a really beautiful moment when somebody hits that, like, wow, I'm going to be out of debt in 2 years, or wow, I'm out of debt, Ivan. It's a beautiful moment. And there's nothing worse than on your next review, seeing that the debt is up $5,000 more, or that the debt is back by $5,000 more. And you have to be honest with yourself at a certain point. How is this happening? Again, no shame or guilt, especially if it's that you're still at phase one, getting control over day-to-day, month-to-month finances, true expenses. I still need that next job promotion or level up. I'm working hard to get there. And this debt is a byproduct of what I have to do to get there. There's no shame in that. But let's make sure that that's what it is, and not, man, it was really important that I took that 2-week vacation to Hawaii when I already live in Southern California and I could have taken it to San Diego via a car, and not paid for the flight. We have to be honest with ourselves. If we have a problem, which I imagine you're here because there's some debt, you want some answers and solutions, we have to be honest with ourselves then. We're not going to help ourselves by sugarcoating it. So, are we driving a car that's beyond what we need and can afford? Or do we need that car very specifically for purposes? Have we been online shopping, maybe even to fill the depression from the debt? Are we filling it with those online shopping goods? Or are they strategic things? Did things in the home really break down that you needed to purchase? You got to be honest with yourself. This is about you, not about me. So that said, I've seen both sides of it. Like I've said, most people that go through putting a plan in place come out better on the other side and don't slip back into it. But you got to reflect on how you got there. We got to change those bad spending habits. So see, no shame over enjoying life. No shame over buying a car, but man, that online shopping, financial IQ wants you to know. That's the point. So we can minimize taking on new debt. Can the car last a little bit longer before we renew? Should we buy instead of lease? Are there places we can renegotiate? So again, I mentioned, check your car APR. If it's super high, and by super high, I mean 6 to 7% in this current environment, can you renegotiate that? Similarly, just had I'm not sure if are we national, Alana? Do we have people from all over?
Yeah, we are across the country.
Oh, okay. Well, hey, drop in the chat where you're at too, because I'm just curious. I'm from Omaha, Nebraska originally. So I have some clients there that have normal lives. I'm in LA now, so I have some clients here that have very not normal lives. So one of my clients in Omaha, Nebraska just did a refi after our financial review because he was paying 4.2%, which is also high in this current environment, especially if you have good credit. So if you can refi, $100,000 mortgage from 4.2 down to 3 or below, and that's a 30-year mortgage, that's going to be thousands of dollars in savings. So renegotiate where you can. That's a big savings point. Smaller savings point is these bad boys. When they creep that bill up on you here, or on the cable bill, they like to creep it up. A lot of times you don't actually need to switch to get a better rate. You just need to call them and tell them you're trying to switch. If you get $20 knocked off of your cell phone bill, that's $240 a year. That's a debt payment. you know? So I see a lot of Los Angeles and New York. So I get the Nebraska stories are a beautiful pipe dream for us, but we're dealing with real estate and pressures here that are unlike anything there. So yeah, but these are important facets to remember is whether it's a mortgage or a cable bill, savings is savings. I've got one other example of a very interesting thing that happens when you analyze your spending. I had a client who worked in a department store, a Lowe's, Home Depot type store as a manager, and every single day spent $12 at the vending machine. And I sat down and I said, what's 12 times 5? Well, 12 times 5 is 60 bucks. What's 60 times 52? You are paying that vending machine $3,000 a year. Now, again, I don't want to guilt you over the things that you need in your life, you know, but have you considered ordering from Costco and carrying them with you to school sorry, that's the parent with the kids in me, you know, ordering from Costco and bringing with you your Mountain Dew, your gummy snacks, and your Snickers bar, you know, like, is carrying a lunch bag so shameful that it's worth $3,000 a year when the actual goods in there are about $400, $500 worth of total goods? That can save you $2,500. That accelerates your debt payoff plan immensely. So I do like that the way that this slide ends, build your credit history and manage your credit score, and then you can be this guy on the tropical island. That's great. So, oh man, I thought there was going to be 4 there, so I clicked on it. So make sure you save, and remember, balance is the key to financial well-being. Getting out of debt is not about whipping yourself or starving yourself. We want financial well-being for everybody. There's just a measure of realism in there and a measure of creating a plan so that you can have that full enjoyment of life. So then there's my contact information if you have specific questions for me or about how we work with clients. So awesome.
Ivan, that was great. It was so helpful. I think we can open up for a Q&A now. So if you have any questions, just feel free to pop them in the chat. I know that I had a question. I have student loan debts from grad school, and I have heard that if you pay like $25 or $50 more a month, that you could reduce by like 10 years. Is that true?
So it always depends on what the actual stuff is, and I'm typing because I'm trying to pull up. So here's what's funny. I have some really advanced tools at my own call, but I'm going to share the screen again. 9 times out of 10 with clients, I just do this because I'm like, if my clients can't do it as easily as I can when it comes to things like that, you know, it needs to be that simple, our finances. So this is an example of where you go, okay, I got 50,000 in student loan debt at 6%. And right now I'm paying $450 a month. All right, look right there. I'm paying 23,000 in interest over the life of this. So I'm paying 75,000 roughly for it.
Mm-hmm.
So let's answer that question exactly. What if I could pull another 50 bucks a month towards it? So I just saved myself $4,000. If you remember, the previous figure was 73,000. Now we're looking at 69,000. And you were talking about payoff time. I didn't even look at that. I was in such a rush. Sometimes I get really fast with these things. Yeah, and look at that. So the 450 is 163 months. That's 15 years almost. Well, the 500 is 140 months, which is 12 years. Yeah.
That's really interesting. If anybody has questions, feel free to raise your hand and we'll unmute you if you'd rather just be as chatty as I am.
Yeah. So let's say, hopefully that's a lower number than what I just threw in there. 6% is kind of standard what we've been seeing, especially on the refis. I do actually know a company. It's not, I don't get a referral fee or anything. It's just a company that I use for my clients that helps people with refining their student loans. So if that is an issue, they're called GradFin, GradFin. So if you want to shoot me an email, I think I can drop that in the chat. If I can figure out how to open up the chat. I'll just drop my email in the chat. But if that is something that you're looking at, I can just make that introduction for you to someone at GradFin, because they can help, because that's the other thing. If your interest rate is 9, let's see what it does to that same 50,000 at 450. So a 9% interest rate, which is only a 50% rise, adds on 80 months to your payment time, and adds on it's 100% increase in your cost. So that's the thing about those interest rates and the way compounding works against us, is a 50% change in interest rate actually 200% changes what it's going to cost us.
Wow. And then hey, Gary, towards the beginning, asked, what are the best investment strategies?
Oh, that's a whole nother seminar.
We can do another one. We'll give it.
Yeah. And I'm happy to. It's a little tough to answer, because one of the challenges of investing is people want to just invest. They're like, how do I make the most money? And the most money, in hindsight, we hear risk equals reward. That's only true in hindsight. So in hindsight, the highest rewards came in things that were really high risk. But when you just say high risk, high reward, you're also ignoring the fact that 19 out of 20 of those high risks won't hit. So if you go bankrupt 19 times, do you have enough capital to hit that 20th time? So that's why investment advisors create a balance and a portfolio and judge risk tolerance in order to figure out what are the best investments for you. In hindsight, we can all say we should have bought Dogecoin 2 years ago, or we should have bought Bitcoin 11 years ago. That's great. How many coins went to zero in that time? There's actually a ton. How would we have known that we'd have chosen the right one? So you can't really say this is the best investment. It's a very personalized thing based on how much time you have to invest, based on what you're trying to accomplish. And I do have a full seminar that goes over that so you can make better choices. Gary also asking, what's the best way to teach my kids about debt? So this is a question I love, because I come from a family that was heavily steeped in debt. I very consciously early in my life, by which I mean about 22, 23, decided I was going to become financially savvy because my parents never were. And something that I learned, and then it turned into a full career in this field with multiple financial licenses and clients across all kinds of silos and demographics. Something I learned very early on is that we don't get financial education in America. The schools don't teach it. We're lucky if we got a class that taught us how to balance a checkbook. Nobody taught us how macroeconomic things influence our financial decisions on the individual level. So it's tough. And I will say, because there's no schooling on it, most Americans get their financial education from their parents, which is a double-edged sword, because if your parents were like mine, you're not getting a very good financial education. What I've seen now working in Beverly Hills is that oftentimes those who are successful also don't teach their children about finances. They say, I was successful, so my children don't have to worry, and don't impart the same education to them either. So Gary, to answer your question, one, it's very important to me, and I love that you ask it, because money is such a weird topic. We don't talk about it in our families. I say just do it. There's no best or bad way to do it, but just find resources, draw pictures. Use this. This is on Credit Karma, this debt calculator. I don't know if your kids are super young or if they're teenagers, and you're talking about a PS5, but be like, hey, if we buy this PS5 on the credit card, how much money are you going to pay me back for it? Okay, they get a $50 a month allowance. Do you realize it's going to take you 2 years to pay that back, and you're actually going to pay $1,200 for it instead of $1,000 for it? You know, it's a good first visual lesson, just doing something as simple as this on a purchase that has some meaning to them. Because I find that people don't care if you talk about things that don't have meaning. You know, like, it's one reason why I try to bring interest rates into what we're actually using them on. Nobody cares about interest rates. You know, when you see an article about the Fed, do your eyes glaze over? Because mine do, and I'm in the industry. Right? So, you know, I would say for teaching children, just find something that's relevant to them. You know, I'm super excited. I'm going to Disneyland next week. You know, hey kids, do you understand how this happened? Like how money works? You know, well, if we pay with money that we've earned, it saves us $200. And what would you do with $200? If I gave you $200 today, how many games for that PS4 or PS5 would you buy? So would you rather have 4 games for your PS4 or put your PS4 on a credit card? PS5. That's how old I am. I know I don't look it, but yeah, PS2 is still the best. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater.
Looks like we have another question too. What's your best advice on lease versus car loan?
So it does, again, come down to your financial situation. Very transparent with mine. So when we found out we were having twins, I showed you my car purchase there. That was a lease originally. So we leased for 3 years because we didn't know what the future was going to look like. It's our first time having kids, first time spending that much on a SUV with all the safety features. So it's all about making a conscious choice. At the end of the day, I believe mathematically buying the car should always be a little cheaper. But remember, financial planning is not always about the absolute cheapest, the bare minimum, the most efficient, so much as providing context so that you're making a choice you can live with. You know, so for me at that point in my life, it made sense to like, let's just get this payment. The payment's a little lower. We don't have to throw down all of the upfront taxes and fees, you know, as new parents that are just about to have to buy diapers ×2. So it made a lot of sense for us to lease. And then we reviewed it 3 years later, and it made more sense for us to buy versus start a new lease with something else. So it's a little bit specific, but those are, if you can ask yourself the questions on why am I doing this, that's what can really help you make a decision. I know some people run through leases because they like new cars. That's fine if you can afford it. So can you afford that never-ending car payment? Or are you in a situation, and I would just wager to say, if you're on this seminar to learn about debt and not just because you like learning at lunch, then maybe it's not a good idea to be perpetually leasing yet, you know. But if you can afford it, you know, if you have a job in Hollywood and having the new Mercedes is important, vital, and you can afford it, I have zero judgment on it. So it's kind of a personal question, but hopefully that gives you an idea of which questions to ask yourself and where it fits in your budget.
Thank you. Do you want to put your last page of your slide up really quick while we wrap
Sure.
up so that your information is there if anybody has any more questions. Again, it will be in the email when we follow up, as well as my contact information. So feel free to reach out to me about Serendipity Labs, to Ivan about anything money matters, it turns out.
Actually, great question there. What are the length of the leases at Serendipity?
We do anything from 1 month to 2 years. We're a membership-based community, so it's a membership agreement. And there's some real benefits to being a member as opposed to having a true lease. For example, everything's included as opposed to doing triple net and pay janitorial and Wi-Fi and all the things that go into it. So love to talk more about that if anybody has any interest.
Awesome. Thank you, Alana. And thank you to our attendees.
Thank you to everybody who's on. Have a great rest of your day.